it starts with a very noble idea. Hey, let's do this, let's revamp this, let's modernize that. What happens after that is there's a straight drop.
Yeah, after you get an award.
And that gap between what we want to do and what the reality on the ground is in that organization keeps widening and widening.
One of the ideas behind the podcast was actually that it's kind of just way of viewing at things, right? Whether IT or non-IT.
When you come to reality, right? When you come to large enterprises, large banks, large retail stores, they're still way behind in technology. Most of them run mainframes very, very successfully, large legacy systems. How do these two things merge?
So I don't need Gen AI to process my payment, right? We can, of course, talk about that, and that's also interesting. But it's about how do we make all the pieces work. Okay, so thank you for joining in this first session of Architect's Lens, our new podcast. With me is Savinder, Savi, and I'm Nenad. We'll try to kick this off with a short introduction and a few information, how we see this podcast evolving, what is it that we want to do with this podcast, and of course, down the line, get your feedback and of course adjust. Savinder, short intro from your side.
Okay, sure. Thank you, Ninad. Hey guys, my name is Savinder Puri. I have been in the build, release, DevOps, software engineering field for over 2 decades. I passed out, did my engineering in the year 2000. And along this time, I've had the opportunity to work in India, UK, Europe, US, South Africa. So I've kind of been around the room. I have worked with large enterprises, small startups. At one point, I had a little consulting gig of my own. Currently, I work with an SI, a system integrator. I'm based in India, and I head the DevOps and SRE practice globally. So very happy to be on this podcast. Ninad is a great friend. Over to you, Ninad.
Likewise. Yeah, so you have quite a big footprint. You've been everywhere. My footprint is smaller. I'm mostly done work in Europe and mostly, of course, Central and Eastern Europe in banking and fintech industries. I've been from the get-go in sort of a software architecture landscape and positions, and gradually came to the enterprise architecture level, work with like major regional banking groups on setting up and running enterprise architecture practices, some projects, different teams, different projects within banking industry. And yeah, I have a consulting gig, which is not just consulting, but also implementation and development and building our products. And from now, I'm a podcaster. Not a professional one, but we'll see.
We'll get there.
Yeah, we'll get there. Yeah. No need to hurry. So I asked Savi to be my co-host on this podcast because I really enjoy our conversations. We have somewhat similar views and somewhat not, which kind of makes any topic interesting. My vision was, to kind of have a place where we can discuss the architectures, the IT side of stuff, IT side of building stuff, but not only IT, right? I'm also quite interested in like organizational culture, hierarchies, what is also called team topologies, team dynamics. Yeah, and these are kind of different areas of where I was once either part of the conversation, either trying to figure stuff out. And talking with people, I found those topics quite interesting. How to build products, how to, define your goals based on goals, how to define how you are going to build something, how to make it, scalable, resilient, how the teams will be structured, how the people in those teams will work together, and what is it that they need to produce and deliver so that the entire thing actually works. So those were, kind of interesting conversations, and some of them I had with you, so as well. And this is why I kind of wanted to do a podcast, right? And one of the ideas was, okay, we will now like shoot some breeze, discuss different topics, but also have guests on that can share their opinions, their views. Maybe do kind of, let's call them workshops with maybe somebody that is interested in us dissecting their products and their organization. So I used to do this kind of workshops. Well, we try to basically decompose like an existing product. The goals, the reasons, how are we building that? Is it good? How can we improve? How are our teams set up? Is there something we can improve? How our systems are working towards those goals, and how to change and improve. And this is something that maybe, not everybody has in their daily work, assessing and reassessing. Is it, the way we're working, is it good or can we improve?
So
And
I have a question for you.
Yeah, please go.
You've said all the things you want to do in the podcast, right? What are the 2-3 things
Not
you
in one
don't want
single episode.
I get that. Yeah. It's not 120-hour episode. It's not.
Yeah.
But what are the things you don't want to do in the podcast? Or I'm sure you've seen other podcasts and you
Yeah.
think like, no, not this.
So I really don't like that, dry, techie jargon, like, it's like a lecture, right? Not very interesting ones. Kind of a dry monologues, right? Where it's maybe full-on sales presentation, right?
Yeah.
This kind of thing. Or some like high-tech deep dive where you have a kind of a person going in so many details that it's not engaging, right?
Yeah.
I'm not saying it's not interesting, the topic or the speaker, but just
it's hard to come up back to the surface then.
Yes. Yeah.
You get too deep.
On the other hand, I really like listen to those kind of podcasts, right? And there is a lot of them.
Yeah.
And there are very few, and I cannot name any that are like, light, discussing, like, like you would do with your colleagues over beer or something. You would, have the techie part, and you would have something that is much lighter, something that is cultural, maybe cuisine.
The important part is to get our personalities into the conversation.
Yes. I think that is the most valuable thing in this podcast.
Otherwise, we can go blah, 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 and it'll be all BS then.
And unfortunately, our third co-host couldn't join for the inaugural session. She will join us later on. She is also, kind of bringing a lot to the table. She's a business architect with quite a diverse experience and life journey. And this will be also kind of a refreshing thing, not to have just the two of us every time. That would get boring. So this is kind of, what do you want to get out there with this one?
Firstly, I want this conversation to be a fun watch. You get some value out of it for sure, but it has to be pleasant to watch. It shouldn't be boring and, oh my God, they've put out another episode. What the heck?
You mean pleasant to listen? Because I mean,
maybe we'll look at at least one side. Yeah.
Lowers.
Yeah, but something fun, and I think we should build on our personal experiences and talk about
Correct.
that,
Yeah.
what we have
Yeah.
seen work, more importantly, what we have seen not work, what
Yeah.
is on our perspective of why it didn't work, because we have seen different sides of the world, right? And
Yes.
share that.
And yeah.
Hopefully, the goal is people find some value or they can pick up some nuggets and go
Yeah.
back and apply in their environments.
Yeah. So, to follow up on that, right? From your experience, like you said, we've seen a lot. What we, let's say, like, don't like. What is your biggest like pet peeve when you like within, of course, your domain? Like, what is it that you find so frequent that it's, I wouldn't say annoying, but you know,
Mm-hmm.
rubs you the wrong way, so to speak.
Yeah. I get that quite a lot. And okay, let me put it politically correctly a little bit to
Yeah.
start with, and then we'll
Yeah,
get
yeah,
there.
yeah.
Yeah. So typically, it starts with a business transformation or a DevOps initiative or whatever you call it, right?
Mm-hmm.
It starts with a very noble idea. Hey, let's do this, let's revamp this, let's modernize that.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
All very noble and great ideas worthy of some awards. What's happens after that is there's a straight drop
Yeah.
because
After you get an award. Yeah.
yeah, after you get the award, then it suddenly drops.
Yeah.
And that gap between what we want to do and what the reality on the ground is in that
Yeah.
organization keeps widening and widening. Ideally, it should start converging somewhere, right?
Yeah.
Either the idea has to
Yeah.
change, evolve, or the maturity has to slowly go up and they have to meet somewhere. Then it'll
Yeah.
fructify.
Yep.
But that doesn't happen.
Yeah, that doesn't happen, and I'm completely with you on this, and it's, I would say, aligned with my kind of biggest pet peeve, and what you see then as a kind of a pattern, right? You have
Mhm.
this modernization initiatives, which start high.
Yep.
Everybody's fully motivated. We have all the buzzwords, mission and vision statements, and this is something we try to do. And as you said, that there's quite a big gap, and
Yep.
nobody is actually, let's say, working on how to bridge the gap, right? So we
Yep.
have this modernization effort, which will, from top down, will slightly decline until there is a new
Yeah, the next one
modernization.
then.
Until the next.
Yeah.
So, and this is kind of a repeating, right?
It's a repeat.
Again, from the experience, what I kind of saw is that this ground level remains grounded
Exactly. Yeah.
for the
So,
most part, right?
yeah.
There are, parts that get improved, right?
Mm.
Parts that, but it's not so much to get an award and to justify and say, okay, we have, I don't know, modernized, transformed,
Yeah.
whatever. But some steps are made, right?
So let me ask you the reverse question.
Okay.
In the organizations where you have seen things work out,
Yeah.
what was the
Okay.
difference?
I would say the structure
Mm-hmm.
and let's call it work ethic. In terms of we're working to deliver that improvement, right?
Mm-hmm.
Not to do the groundwork, but our work is to deliver the improvement, and it's kind of goes into if the vision, right, is shared successfully throughout the entire work chain, right, and how the people adopt this change and this kind of mindset. I don't like that term because it's overused, but it's
Yeah.
and it's unfortunately correct, right? It is what it is,
Yeah.
Those kind of organizations, I do must say that in terms of when you have kind of a structure and everybody knows what they need to do and they can depend on the other one delivering what they need to do, then kind of stuff works. But in order, to get there, when you basically can foresee what will be the scope of work, and you know how much time and what is the effort to do it. When you can, predict that, and you can have concrete plans and concrete. There's quite a journey to get to that position, where
Yeah,
you
yeah.
can actually have an organization that is able to predict the outputs with certainty. But yeah, I think kind of that is always the goal of transformation, is to get to the place where you can predict the future, or at least the outcomes of what you're working.
All right, so let's come back to the podcast,
Yeah.
right? Over a period of time, let's discuss about what kind of things do we want to talk about in this podcast series. What are the broad topics that we want to cover?
From my view, and of course, I'm coming from architecture side of things, I do want to talk about, actually what is architecture, because I see that this is not understood. How is this applied in an organization, whether it's small or big? And I'm not talking about just, like software architecture, how do we build an app, right? We can,
Okay.
of course, talk about that, and that's also interesting. But it's about how do we make all the pieces work, right? And this gets quite complex in large organizations, and it can be quite simple for smaller ones. This is one thing I kind of like, because especially this way of connecting all the levels to understand how something works and how a change in one part is affecting the other parts. Right?
Okay.
This can be applied not just to systems and software components. It could be applied to organizational departments, teams, etc. So it's
Yeah.
kind of a broad.
Applied in life as well.
Yeah, yeah. And this is so one of the ideas behind the podcast was actually that it's kind of just way of viewing at things, right? Whether IT or non-IT, live things. And that is kind of the reason why I kind of went with the architect's lens, like way of viewing at things. And it could be applied to any profession actually, or anyone in particular. Even, what's an architect's view on, how a household operates, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And this was, basically, this was also one of the reasons, was so that we can chat more often. In the way we work, we often enough don't engage in those kind of conversations.
Yeah.
And since we have those interesting conversations, you and me, I thought, why not make it available for everyone to listen to
Yeah.
whilst driving or otherwise listening to podcasts.
Correct.
Yeah.
I think we must also, try and infuse the elephant or the rhino in the room, that is AI, which everybody's talking about. So we also have to talk about it, and how
We
it's
will.
impacting, the entire SDLC.
Definitely. This is something that is really like becoming a new internet. I mean, it is, and we knew that it will happen. But I am, maybe due to my advanced age, I'm quite surprised at the speed of change. Right?
Yes.
It is extreme. It is, something, that at least leaves me, I don't know what would be the correct term to, emphasize amazement, the I don't know, amount of time that something is becoming obsolete is weeks, right? It's you try, and this is, for instance, these are the discussions I'm having with like higher management in terms of, okay, everything is moving towards AI. Where do we invest, right? What is the tech stack, the technology, a long-term plan? I said, there's no long-term plan. You cannot start building a product today that you want to release in a year, because then it's done. right?
It's gone.
It's gone. So it's more on developing the practices of, trying out quickly, delivering quickly, and then replacing with something new, right?
No, I get the point. I get the idea.
Okay.
But my thought is this is all awesome on Twitter, X, and LinkedIn. When you
Yeah.
come to reality, right? When you come to
Yeah.
large enterprises, large banks, large retail stores, they're still way behind in technology.
Yeah.
Most of them run mainframes very, very
Yeah.
successfully, large legacy systems. How
Yeah.
do these two things merge?
They don't, right? And they shouldn't.
Yeah,
I mean,
I,
so
I
there's a
like the
use
bluntness in that. Guys, the podcast is over.
Yeah,
It's great.
that's it.
That's
I
it.
mean, we solved that. The
We
AI
said
thing
it.
is solved. So you
Yeah.
can go home now, finally. No, I mean, you have AI use cases, right? And especially now,
Yeah.
when everybody's saying AI, they usually mean Gen AI, right?
Yeah.
And there are use cases for that, right? So I don't need Gen AI to process my payment, right? It's request
Yeah.
response. Do I have the money in
Correct.
my account? No. Yeah, thank you very much, right? There's no
Yeah.
Gen AI to generate money on my account, unfortunately. Not
You don't
yet.
need a replit to do that.
So there will be use cases where you don't need AI, right? And as you said, LinkedIn, so marketing, sales, customer support, this is where majority of AI use cases are built,
Yeah.
at least for instance for banking, right? And for banking, there is the regulator part of the story, so it gets even more complicated. But this is where most of the things are, at least in my view, kind of moving to image generation. For banking, what it will generate an image of my account
Okay.
or what.
On this image generation thing, have you seen the latest thing, that Ghibli art? Have you seen that?
I have seen the titles, but I have successfully avoided the content.
Okay. Okay. I have a
But
more
I
deeper
know.
question. I have a
Yeah,
deeper
yeah.
question for you, right?
Okay,
So
go.
this guy who made this Ghibli art
Yeah,
studio, it's a Japanese guy, right?
yeah, yeah,
He did that in, I think, 87, 88 time frame,
yeah,
right? And his whole thing is that at that time, it took me about a year to come out with a comic because
yeah.
every piece is hand drawn, beautifully crafted.
Yeah, a
And now
piece of
this
art.
thing
Yeah,
comes out where he can do it in 30 seconds.
yeah. From
Where is
any.
art and technology? Is there a clash?
Yeah, of course there is. Even more so now when you can see that content or what public is consuming
Yeah,
can be automatically generated. So
correct.
so the yeah so on the other hand, the question is: Are we art consumer, or we just take in whatever garbage there is, right?
Yeah,
Because
exactly. Because
we
no, no.
perfectly are
Yeah,
quite content with looking at this AI
yeah,
generated image, right?
yeah, yeah.
So we're not obviously refined an audience, right? To
Connoisseurs of the art.
consumers of art, yeah, to demand, real
Yeah.
art. But I think that is a generalization. I believe that, they have learned and taught
Mhm.
an AI how to copy a style, right?
Correct.
And he can create my portrait
Mm.
in that style, right?
Yeah.
And I can use it for my, I don't know, LinkedIn profile, whatever, right?
Mm.
But it's not art, and it never will be until you have, I don't know, a connection with the artist painting your portrait, and he has the
No, but
capacity.
I'll differ there, right? Today I
Okay.
can create static images. Maybe 2 weeks later, I'll be able to create 5-minute movies in the same format.
Yeah.
If I can prompt it a story, it'll
Okay.
generate maybe just a 5-10 minute movie for now.
Yeah.
Yeah, right. 6 months later, it could be a half an hour movie. That's
Yeah.
art.
No, no, no. So in terms of I mean, I shared you my AI video of a podcast intro, so you can see. Yeah, you saw. I mean, how
Okay.
great of a tool that is. So
Yeah, yeah.
I can molest people all over with my AI accomplishments. Yeah, but in terms of, so you can create content, right? Which
Yeah.
may or may not have a purpose, right? It can be just for fun,
Mm.
which is fine. And again, I wouldn't call it art. You can say I have personalized the output of an AI tool by instrumenting the prompts and whatnots, right? And you
Mm-hmm.
can then infer that it is yours, right?
Yeah.
But in fact, the entire thing was trained on work that is not yours, which is another topic for another podcast.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
But then you say, okay, I have created a video and it deserves an Oscar, like in my case with the podcast intro, right?
Mm.
But again, I must say that no, it's not art.
Mm.
So it is a creation where I had some impact, that kind of guided the tool to deliver, what I wanted. And granted,
Yeah.
it's a much more capable tool than I would do in, I don't know, Adobe tools in and with my
Mm.
camera, right? So it has much stuff in there that helps me create what I want created.
Yeah.
Again, is it art? No, but
I think,
does it
yeah, I
help
think we
me
need deeper
produce some?
conversation on this. I'm
Yeah, yeah.
conscious of time. We are clocking almost half an hour.
Oh, yeah. But we'll cut like most of it. We'll be just hi and goodbye. Yeah. So yeah, this is an we haven't mentioned the copyright issues,
Yes.
especially for image generation.
Yes.
But it is, I think, and it's not just for like graphic arts or visual arts
Mm.
that AI is now kind of heavily involved. Also, like I had this panel, right, and we were discussing about AI, and there was like a mention, okay, uh, everybody is now using AI to write emails, right? So that it's
Right. Yeah.
formal, constructed language. So, and then say, yeah, but now you have tools that write you emails, and you
Mm.
send those emails as a sender, and then a consumer has a AI tool that
That's the
something
same thing.
writes it. Yeah. Why are we doing that? Just because two AIs need to work on their emails?
You can
But
go on
then,
holiday then.
but that just means that there is so much unnecessary work, right?
Yeah.
And if you can replace, part of your work with AI, that just means it's grunt work, right? And
Yeah.
maybe humankind is created for greater things. I don't know. And AI will do
On
that.
that note,
Yes, on that
on that
note.
wise note, yeah.
Yeah. We can end it here.
Yeah.
There is a lot of open topics I think we can follow up on in our
Sure.
next session.
Yeah.
Hopefully that will be soon, and hopefully Sam will join us for that session. And until then, thank you for listening and see you next time. Savi.
Cheers, guys.